Good evening. Welcome to another edition of Cultivating the Culture. Tonight's show, we're going to continue with discussing Ice Cube's contract with Black America, and we're working on Section 5, Police Reform, and we have our guest, Muhammad Bashir, and I am your host, Tariq Ibn Jamil Lang. And as always, we start off with the great words of our wise brother, Malcolm X, or Malik Shabazz.
Nowadays, to learn how to do is see for yourself and listen for yourself and think for yourself, and then you can come to an intelligent decision for yourself. But if you form the habit of going by what you hear others say about someone, or going by what others think about someone, instead of going and searching that thing out for yourself and seeing for yourself, you will be walking west when you think you're going east. You'll be walking east when you think you're going west. So this generation, especially of our people, have a burden upon themselves more so than at any other time in history. The most important thing we can learn how to do today is think for ourselves. It's good to keep wide open ears and listen to what everybody else has to say. But when you come to make a decision, you have to weigh all of what you heard of its own and place it where it belongs, and then come to a decision for yourself, and you'll never regret it. But if you form the habit of taking what someone else says about a thing without checking it out for yourself, you'll find that other people will have you hating your own friends and loving their enemies.
Welcome back. Definitely some good words from my brother. The major thing is that we need to be able to learn to think for ourselves. He made this statement almost 60 years ago, teaching the youth that we need to be able to think for ourselves. And this is what we're trying to do with our show, Cultivating the Culture, to be able to work to hopefully the next generation, this generation, and our generation, we can learn to think for ourselves and be able to have a better plan for our future. As we always go at the beginning, talk about our program, Cultivating the Culture. As you see, we have our shirt, Jamaat al-Sijin, that's in Arabic for those that can't read it. And that's a group that's under the umbrella of our organization, which is called the Nation of Faith, Ummat al-Iman. And Ummat al-Iman is an organization that works with teaching, increasing faith, belief in the Creator, belief in correct belief in his understanding about his angels, about his books, about his prophets, about his determination of what we call the qadr, that he determines everything, the good and the bad, and about us believing in the last day. Jamaat al-Sijin is a program that we had with the prisons, and what we try to do is try to make a change in our society, but we are, like I say all the time, we are unapologetically believers in the Creator, the unseen being, the Creator of existence that has created this universe, but we push forward with aiding our people. So aiding our people, one of the things that we want to talk about is the effort from Ice Cube putting forward his contract with Black America. It's a great effort, and we decided to start off our shows by going over some of the items. He had various different items. And today on our guest is Muhammad Bashir. Muhammad Bashir is a retired criminal attorney and also a constitutional expert. And he has written several books, and I'm going to let Mr. Bashir speak for himself.
Thank you again. Thank you for having me. I know some focus right on the camera. Look forward to going through some of these things on the contract for America. But let's get right into it.
Okay. Well, one of the things is in the section for police reform is he went over a lot of items. So I'm just going to actually name the items, and then I'd like you to expound on what you want to expound on. I mean, yeah, I know you know about all of them, but qualified immunity, one of them is qualified immunity will be eliminated. 2, mandatory malpractice insurance. 3, he expects municipalities liable for the office on constitutional actions. 4, police unions can be liable and sued for shielding bad cops. 5, mandatory dashboard and body cams for all officers. 6, cam body dashboard to be released within a week of the incidents. 7, eliminate no knock warrants, and I'm definitely with that one. 8, mandatory name tags and affiliation requirements. 9, chokeholds illegal nationwide. 10, whistleblower protection expanded to active police force or for those on police enrolled in the academy. 11, tampering with evidence results in automatic dismissal from the force and should be criminal prosecution. 12, crime to intentionally withhold evidence by police. 13, this newly discovered DNA evidence must be immediately considered. 14, federal database open to public scrutiny containing all complaints, both internal and both internal from the public related to disciplinary actions. Then, officer, once fired for cause, cannot be rehired. The creation of an independent prosecutors. Another one, 19 attorney generals and district attorneys can no longer accept contributions. Another, loss of pensions if convicted of a felony greater while on the job. So, I mean, this is amazing. It continues, but go on. Actually, well, I might as well finish. We're almost done. It says budget reallocation and what has to be referred to with defunding the police to 20% of the budgets, and then going forth. Residency requirement: 90% of police must live within 25 miles of the jurisdiction they work in. 65% must live within the jurisdiction in the South. Mandatory certain number of police departments paid hours of community service for street police in the communities. Community police and non-armed personnel set up to handle most cases. These include taking reports for crimes already committed. Remove permanent police officers from all grade and middle school and high schools. Domestic abuse, this is beautiful. Domestic abuse, create domestic abuse services analogous to child protective services. Personnel trained to deal with domestic abuse, and this is a major. Then de-escalation police training, how to de-escalate a situation and techniques. Next, continua of training to be updated every 3 years. And then any police officer who discharges his weapon 5 or more times on the job must go back to the police academy for retraining. Civil rights history must be taught for the first month in the police academy. Then reason for the contact upon initial contact of any citizen has to be offered and stated. And it says, next one, no duty to speak. Police not allowed to escalate situation merely because of a person refuses to talk to an officer. Then misstate office for the officers. Misstating the law by police to suspects not allowed to elicit testimony. Reduce contact during traffic ticketing. Officer must immediately tell the driver why he or she was pulled over. And then stealing, police officers caught stealing from a person's house or vehicle will be charged with double the penalty of a non-officer charge. Military grade weapons will be not be brandished unless brandished under fire. Eliminate civil and criminal asset criminal and civil assets. It gives the police departments economic incentive to charge crimes. So, wow.
We're talking about asset forfeiture.
Asset forfeiture.
Yeah.
Asset forfeiture.
Yeah.
It's okay. It would be illegal for police officers. Yeah, they don't have the word. It would be illegal for police officers to have sex with a detainee or suspect under their charge, or should be at any time. And then shoot to wound policy in effect unarmed suspect, fleeing suspects that possess no immediate danger. Wow. And then last one is end of all quota-based policing. So, I don't. I'm just trying to figure out why would anybody be against him putting this forward. I mean, just alone, this is enough to be able to make a major change other than just a statement, oh, defund police, which is what the regular media, the regular people have just been putting out. Defund police, a statement, but no plan. And this man has put together, different plans. And if we were to be able to build on these things, if anything, even if you get a tenth of these, passed, you'd have major change. So what do you think?
That's a fact. I think that's I think that's what's important about you discussing this. You're discussing it in terms of he put together a plan to submit to the various parties so that the people could have a discussion about what's going on the street on their level. And a lot of it is directly connected to how police interact with the black community, with minority communities in America. That's why it's powerful. But they got caught up in the politics of it, as opposed to getting to the heart and the meat of the discussion. For example, let's deal with qualified immunity. He does say something within it that's a little bit wrong. He considers in his statement that qualified immunity is an affirmative defense. It's not. Qualified immunity is an immunity. It's not absolute immunity. Immunity meaning you can't be prosecuted. Qualified immunity is when a particular person who works for the state has the ability to argue in front of the court that in the absence of proof that they, as long as they work for the state or are in the course of committing their state function, doing their state function, that they are immune from a particular level of prosecution as long as they can establish, or unless somebody can establish, that there was a precedent, that they violated someone's right, constitutional or otherwise, and they had a reason to know that they were violating this particular person's rights.
Can you give me an example?
The courts interpret that as there being case precedent that establishes that this is a right that the person has. So, for example, a cop shoots a kid dies, the parents sue. The cop has qualified immunity from that particular suit. It's not a criminal case. It's always in a civil case, always in civil litigation. And one of the real things is that what makes it immunity is that they grant you this immunity, but they say, would a reasonable person act in that circumstance? And the qualifier in that reasonable person standard is that there has to be some case precedent that would allow the officer to know that he is violating your rights. So, for example, Breonna Taylor was just killed by police officers in Louisville.
Right, unfortunately.
Breonna Taylor settled her case, or her family settled the case for somewhere in the neighborhood of $12 million. There never will be a case for somebody who gets shot like Breonna Taylor that establishes a case precedent. So therefore, the next person who sues, the cop may have sovereign immunity, or at least qualified immunity, because there is no case law out there that suggests that he knew or should have known, by virtue of his training and experience, that shooting someone in their hallway is illegal or violates their rights.
Okay.
Now, we know that as individuals. We can say as laypersons, come on, you shoot somebody, they're unarmed, you violated their rights. That's not how the law interprets it. It gives the police officer the benefit of the doubt and gives them immunity until there is a particular case precedent that establishes it. And that's why, I don't want to bust anybody's hustle, but that's why whenever we settle these particular cases without them going to trial, you don't have the opportunity to establish case precedent.
So them making that settlement eliminated case
The
precedent.
possibility of someone coming along after that and arguing, I have qualified immunity, because there is no case precedent that establishes that the conduct of a no-knock warrant, kicking the door and then firing on the people inside, there's no case precedent that establishes that. And that's what the hard part is in establishing these. If you can get past qualified immunity, then you go to affirmative defenses. So when Ice Cube puts in there that it's no longer treated as an affirmative defense, it's not. It's an immunity. Immunity meaning you can't be prosecuted for it unless these 1, 2, or 3 things are established. If you can establish that they knew there was case precedent, etc., then you can sue, and the person therefore would have to defend using whatever affirmative defenses that there are, like reasonableness, I was afraid for my life, etc., etc.
Right.
All right. There's some other things too. Now again, these are things that should have been discussed by the Democratic
Because
Committee, the Republican Party.
because he actually, it's funny. I was looking at the document, and when you see the document, says before, it says that the the Democratic Party should oppose qualified immunity on their platform. This is in August. So when this document was written, they had a full intent to work with the Democratic Party. They put it in here to present it to them. They even put it in their document that they should present it before August, before they actually had the official party platform.
Now,
So
if you're a hopeless political skeptic like me, then you understand why he took all the political heat. Because nobody really wants to address this because it goes directly to the black community. So saying defund the police is a slogan that people can argue against and for, and saying, oh, they're trying to take money from the police without going into the depths of what it is to take money from the police. But they can't argue against that because it goes in depth.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So
Exactly.
it gives you the depth.
Exactly.
There are a couple of things in it I think are absolutely really powerful. I think it's number 12 you read. Read number 12 to me again.
Okay. 12. Whistleblower. Let me see.
I think it's 12 and 13 are very, very powerful.
Tampering with evidence, crime to intentionally,
with evidence.
right? Tampering
All
evidence.
right. Let me explain how that works. Having tried 1,000 cases where the evidence has been tampered with. What that really means is that if you can establish that an officer fudged the evidence, fixed the evidence, put a weapon down, put some drugs into place, the case should be dismissed. There should be no question of credibility at that point. If you're able to establish it, it should be done. It should be over. Because it's supposed to be, if you're a prosecutor, your job is to seek justice, not to seek conviction. So if you find that an officer is one, lied on the record, fudged the report, lied in his report, planted evidence, was caught lying in another case, all of that should be exposed. And so to have that debate as a part of police reform puts the police on notice that if you don't do the job correctly, nothing about you will come across as credible, and we will not allow anything to taint the process. We need that, especially in the criminal justice system, in order for you to have police reform. You need to be able to find a way to hold them accountable. So then when they turn their camera off, right before the incident happened, that's a credibility question that should inure to the benefit of the so-called defendant or the person who was injured as a result of police conduct, arrested or charged.
Yeah, because when you go to trial, I mean, what they do is try to break down your credibility.
Absolutely.
Like, you'll ask you questions, and they say, oh, well, you said this earlier, so,
Right.
they should be able to do that.
That's right.
With the officer.
Yeah, like for example, what they commonly refer to as prior bad acts that go toward plan, motive, etc. They're allowed to introduce prior bad acts that go toward plan, motive, things along that line. Well, the same thing should happen with a police officer. If I have 10 complaints against
Exactly.
me of a similar nature, they all should be allowed to be introduced against this officer. And frankly, if I'm a prosecutor and I see 10 complaints against this police officer, then that should question his credibility, because the prosecutor seeking justice, which is their mandate, should be turning those complaints over. That's why I always encourage people, if a cop does something to you that is improper, file the complaint, because there'll come a time where the law will change because of conversations like Ice Cube put forward, where they actually will have to change that to where those prior bad acts or those prior complaints can become credibility questions as it relates to the particular officer. Number 13 was also one.
Okay. Let me see. Newly discovered DNA evidence must be immediately considered.
The DNA evidence is one of the things that has exonerated over the last 10 years over 2,000 people from criminal complaints. And you're talking about people who have languished on death row, people who have languished with life convictions. I mean, I was literally involved in a case in New Jersey where the guy was, I wasn't like I tried the case or anything, but I was involved with because it was through the public defender's office in Union County. And the guy was accused of killing 2 kids. And he allegedly took a nail gun and nailed them to the wall. That's how he killed them, by shooting them in the head with a nail gun. He languished on death row for like 15 years until DNA testing showed that he couldn't have done it. And he had to be released. It actually pointed to someone else who was eventually convicted or whatever.
Wow.
But the point is, some of this DNA testing, considering the nature of how sophisticated it is now, is available for everything, almost every kind of case. But what happens is, in these kind of cases, which precipitated the so-called Brady rule, is that the prosecutors will hold on to this information and not turn it over while they're negotiating pleas. Sometimes they won't even turn it over during a trial.
And
You have to
this,
find out 10, 15 years later that
Right.
there was DNA, and that was DNA that was tested even. So it should be mandatory testing in those kind of cases, because they test them when they're trying to convict you.
Right.
Mandatory testing, and if the testing turns up in your favor, it has to be turned over immediately.
but that's the thing, with the police reform. A lot of times we're just thinking actually the officers, but they're all together. Even the prosecutors are a part of this and stuff. So, like you said, a prosecutor withholding information,
That's right.
he should be liable.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the
But
things.
that's part and parcel of his explanation. He's talking about other entities that are connected to the police also have to be a part of this particular reform in order for it to work.
Right.
Can you imagine in a Freddie Gray case, the what is this guy called? The pathologist from the state.
Right.
He does a report, an autopsy report, and he says Freddie Gray's neck was broke on a rough ride in a van. While the people on the street were saying they could hear Freddie screaming and the guy bent him like a pretzel. The street versus the pathologist.
Right.
The pathologist actually took the case out of the hands of the prosecutor by saying that it happened on the car ride, which means there's no blame on the police officers.
Right.
All right? That's the kind of reporting that gets police out of the circumstances that they're in, but
Right.
it's the same.
Yeah, because the thing is the
line.
pathologist is paid by the government, by the city, and so it's up to him to be able to make sure that they're covered.
That's
He's
right.
not going to try to get his boss in trouble. So, and that's why I like how they were talking about having independent, groups or evaluating issues and stuff, as opposed to just dealing directly with the prosecutors.
Which I think is number 16 or whatever he asked for, independent prosecutors on all police cases.
Right.
I mean, think about the nature of that discussion, of having it. Because what you're doing is literally saying, if there's a police shooting, you can go out and say, I want Joe Jones from the block, the lawyer who I know, who I trust, to come in with the state's money and investigate this particular case, as opposed to a prosecutor from that office. You see
Exactly,
a number of
right.
cases where they have to farm it off to another city or whatever. They did that with Ahmaud Arbery down in Atlanta. All right, it had to go to another county in order for
But the thing
prosecutor.
is,
but somebody who's totally independent of the state, has no stake in the state. The state is not
Right.
cutting their check.
Right.
They haven't gotten elected by anybody.
Right.
There's not no party affiliation that they have to worry about. Coming in independent, bring his own team on the state's dollars, since the state wants to prosecute,
Right.
and let him him or her do the independent investigation, puts it in a fair playing field.
Right.
It puts it in the playing field of someone who is detached and disinterested from any political or social or community connection, except the idea of seeking justice. That's a discussion that absolutely has to be had.
Yeah, because like you said, even if they go to another jurisdiction, all of them are in that same police union. All of them are in the same union, so they're all connected.
That's right.
And they have it, and so that was one of the things he talked about, is that a police union,
Yeah.
which is it's nationwide,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
their job, they're responsible. All they do is just focus on clearing the guys, whether
saw-
right or wrong.
You saw that work in the Breonna Taylor, right? The black prosecutor was a prosecutor who was assigned to the case because the actual prosecutors from Louisville couldn't handle it, so they brought down an AG from another office.
Right.
He was supposed to be independent. And what did he do? He did the nice white thing of protecting the white officers by saying, we didn't find any error in what the police did in the shooting there. Although one guy was shooting his gun randomly, so we charged him.
Right.
He was literally siding with the cops without having ever done the due process on the investigation, because the jurors came out afterward and said, we were never presented with murder.
Right.
So he led the people to believe something else was going on, when in fact there was nothing. He really did no investigation. He was supposed to be independent. Now they find that he's allegedly connected to the Republican Party. He's allegedly connected to Mitch McConnell. He was at a Trump rally. All that political affiliation has tainted the justice that should have been in the Breonna Taylor murder aspect of the case.
Right.
Now remember, they already settled the civil case. So therefore, you can't go back and retry that civil case, because that's, to me, is the strategy. You make these guys take the witness stand in the civil case like they did with Bill Cosby. Had him take civil depositions, and then opened up the deposition and used the deposition against him in a criminal trial.
Right. Wow. Yeah. Okay, and one of the things where you talked about mandatory malpractice insurance, what do you think about that?
I think that is a tremendous discussion that has to happen. Can you imagine what happens if every time an officer is accused of something, it potentially impacts on his pocket? like you and I get a ticket, right?
Right.
Our insurance premium might go up for speeding.
Right. Exactly right.
Can you imagine if that was linked to his insurance
Oh, yeah.
policy?
Yeah.
That every time he pulls
Make
his
it much
weapon,
more
fires at
difficult.
somebody,
Oh, of course,
nobody-
of course.
It's like the old Chris Rock joke. Chris Rock said, "Look, if they made bullets cost $5,000, the cat who's ready to shoot you, I'll bust a cap in your behind as soon as I get my check." You know, but that's
Right.
that's the thought process. You
Right.
have to find ways that if these guys are going to be public servants,
Right.
as opposed to private. The public has to have a say-so in how it is that they run, and that
right.
to me,
And
mandatory
that's-
insurance
yeah.
is one of the things that I
Yeah,
think.
definitely. I mean, he had said basically, I mean, these guys got to make a choice of whether they're going to feed their family or they're going to continue to be racist.
That's
you
right.
know, because like I said, once you lose your insurance, you know, then what you're going to do?
You can't keep that job. You
No,
don't
you
have
can't
insurance.
keep
Just
that.
like I can't drive
And-
my car
right.
if I don't have no
So,
insurance.
like when you see all these videos, these guys jumping out and busting somebody over the head and flipping them and all of that and stuff, and we're starting to see an increase in that. Especially they're doing it to our sisters.
Yeah.
I mean, which is
Yeah.
it's just crazy because
Lights out,
it's
right?
just right. And that's one of the things obviously just that we have line one. Well, you can be able to call in to our program. The number is 301-429. 9247. We're encouraging people to be able to come in and take advantage of this knowledge that's right here. You can be able to speak with Bashir or talk with ourselves and make your comments. Like I said, 301-429-9247. That's 301-429-9247. Today's show, we're continuing. We're going to be over at 9 o'clock. Usually we only do a half hour, but we've extended it because of this issue. Police reform is necessary to be able to have a change. And like I said, when I heard people talking about just defunding the police, I wasn't really with that because I live in Baltimore now, in the Baltimore area. And ever since the Freddie Gray situation, there's been a decrease greatly in the black community as far as policing. And so now it's just left up to anybody that's there. And so the crime has actually increased. While in the other, they said if they're going to be defunded, they're going to take the funds, they're going to take it, and they're only going to police the other area, or basically the upper scale area. So going to it, elimination of no-knock warrants. And the Taylor incident is what really brought that forward and stuff. I guess it's been going on for a while. No-knock warrants. How long has that been around?
It's been around for almost forever. I think it really gained prominence in the '60s with the riots.
Mm-hmm.
It really began prominence, but so did SWAT, so did federal funding of police, local police.
Mm-hmm.
All that arose out of the Safe Neighborhoods Act 1968, signed by Lyndon Johnson,
right,
following the King assassination and the riots from there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, no-knock warrant, so that you get an understanding. A warrant means that you have gone to a court, you've established probable cause.
Right.
Every warrant, though, means that there has to be someone who comes in and testifies. And the court has to find that particular testimony credible in order to sign off on the warrant.
Right.
Therein lies a problem in and of itself, because most of these cats aren't credible.
Right.
When they come in and get a warrant, they come in and say whatever it is that they want to say. And if you go through the case law, you'll see the ones that are reversed usually wind up with a person came with his boilerplate warrant, etc., and said, "Here, give me a warrant." Now look at Breonna Taylor's case. They get a warrant. The guy who is actually their target is already locked up when they go to execute this no-knock warrant on her spot. Why they would need a no-knock warrant at that particular point for her spot? No-knock warrant is only supposed to have three components to it. One, probable cause. Two, the idea that they could lose, somebody would destroy evidence. And three, that the person behind who you're about ready to search or the property has a history of violence. So there's no way they can establish that they had a no-knock warrant to search Breonna Taylor because she had no history of violence, nor was the person who they said was violent at her apartment because they knew he was already locked up. All right? So no-knock warrants mean that the police officer can come in unannounced, kick the door in, and come in.
And the way they put it in the media as though that was just, they found out after, he was locked up. We didn't even know that he was already locked up. So you're basically saying even before they got the warrant, they knew that he was already locked up.
Absolutely. How would you be in charge of an investigation and the guy who you're investigating gets locked up? And you don't know that.
And nobody tells you, right? Because
that makes sense, right?
Right, yeah. It's not like the town's that big.
Absolutely. That's the nature of no-knock. But what no-knock creates is the atmosphere. So when I come in especially in a state that has a free right to carry.
Mm-hmm.
And almost every state has the right for you to defend your home and have a gun in your home.
I mean, and it's natural. I mean, think about it. You know, in D.C., you know, PG, even in Baltimore. I mean, I'm out of D.C. and PG area, and you know, there's a lot of home invasions, and so somebody comes in, you're knocking at my door. You know, most likely they're going to be leaving out in a body bag. That's my intention.
That's right.
And you know, if you kicking in the door, I have to protect my family.
That's that's the first thought of every person who is trained to carry a weapon, is that you have the right to protect your home.
Right.
Absolutely. So
that's where the conflict. If I have a right to protect my home, I'm an American citizen. You come in, I have my family there, and all of a sudden doors kicked in, nobody's saying anything and stuff, whatever, and they could be lying. I mean, the criminals could be okay with the police, you know, as they kick in your door and then rob you and stuff. So I have to defend my family. I have to defend myself. So then now I shoot them. Then
that's right. And you from the Bronx, and I'm from Elizabeth, New Jersey.
Right.
So we've seen actually
doors
get kicked in by cats pretending that they were something that they wanted to be
definitely,
to get in.
Yeah, that's a regular routine.
So this is not new.
Right.
So anybody who has common sense knows that if you don't announce, you open the door for a confrontation.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly. You increase the probability of a confrontation.
Absolutely. So
you know, it's not like okay, they kicked in the door. I can just give up.
Yeah.
You know, I'm gonna run and stuff. No.
That's right.
No.
That's right. That doesn't make sense. Even the concept of a no-knock warrant doesn't make sense.
Right.
Even if you believe the person on the other side is violent.
Right. So elimination of that. That's major. And then he says chokeholds. Legal nationwide. So, you know, and he said this will apply to any maneuvers resembling a chokehold, because that's the whole thing. I mean, you know, there's certain moves that you can do, and you can end up in that position where you can choke somebody to death.
The tricky part about that is he's asking for a federal legislation when the states have individual legislatures that can pass this particular law.
Right.
So when he addresses it to the party, I'm hoping that he means address it to the party, and that means not only out of Biden's mouth, but out of the mayor's mouth and out of the governor's mouth as well.
Right.
That this has to shut down.
And then probably the leadership referring it to those governors, to those Democratic or whatever, the Democratic Republican governors talking about it as far as them doing it.
So,
because him as the president, okay, well, and sit down, let's talk with you concerning this issue.
He can be the one who pushes it forward, kind of like Clinton pushed forward the crime bill, and then all the states took it on themselves to go out and just lock people up randomly.
Right.
That's where your mass incarceration comes from. It didn't come from, there wasn't a mass incarceration in the federal courts. It was mass incarceration in the state, following, though, Clinton's lead on his so-called war on the streets, war on crime.
Right.
You know, and therein lies kind of like just a little hitch, but I think when you have the discussion, those kind of things are separated and people are able to understand them better. But he never had the discussion, and it was something that was worth discussing.
Right. Whistleblower protection expanded with active police force, or for those enrolled in the police academy. Just like in Baltimore, there was a police officer that was getting ready to go to trial, and he ended up killing himself. That's what they said. What was it? Bruh. They found him dead in the alley. And,
Right.
He decided, you know what? I don't want to tell all my guys. I'm gonna shoot myself in the head.
Yeah. So
that's what they said. So this is the type of stuff. Yeah.
Now I was on the street in Baltimore when that happened, and there's not one person on the street in Baltimore who believes that he killed
himself in the alley. Oh, okay. Right. You know, I'm not going to trial. Okay, hold on for a second. We have somebody in line one. Hello, how you doing? Your name?
My name is Lisa.
How you doing, Lisa?
Hi.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask a question now. Now that it's a new president, are they working on the police reform, or what is happening with the contract with America?
Well, there's been pretty, from what I know, I haven't heard anything. I just heard silence about it. You know, even though, like I said, it was presented to them. I know they talked about having. Yeah, from my understanding, nothing's happening. You know, that I know of. You know, they haven't brought it up. They're actually still trying to ridicule him amongst the media about sitting down with Trump, and they're like, oh, now he lost or whatever, as opposed to discussing issues. I see all of these shows, all of these individuals that attacked him. They're not attacking this. They're not attacking the ideas. They're not attacking the necessity of it. But, you know, the fact, that you met with Trump and, you know, you shouldn't have. Even though, like I said, in the document right here, clearly says that they were supposed to meet that he had presented it to the Democrats, and then as the Democrats, as he said, and Democrats said, he spoke with them for several months, but they never mentioned it.
Right.
And so, now here it is. So that means for several months you looked at it. At every level, they saw these things. These are people that are prosecutors. These are people that are politicians that have been dealing with it. So they know that these are great ideas that should have been pushed forward, that should have been spoken about, but they're still not spoken about. So that's a good question. What do you have to say about that?
So, sister, take a look at what has happened since the election. Mr. Clyburn came out and ridiculed the progressives for saying defund the police as a slogan, as opposed to it really being a manifestation of what this is. That is a whole revamping of police and the police mentality, which is what was on the table with Ice Cube's thing. But that became the focal point. Obama came out and weighed in on it too, and he said we should be talking about police reform. Well, they are the ones doing the sloganing. Police reform under Obama meant the consent decrees. Mm-hmm. All right, so you would go in, you would investigate a particular city. Out of his term, they investigated 22 cities, and out of the 22 cities, they found out all of them. Every one that they investigated. So imagine the ones they didn't investigate. But every one that they investigated were violating the rights of the citizens with impunity, charging people illegally, giving them tickets so that they can mount up their budgets, etc. Filing false complaints. Cops were corrupt, violating people's rights. And so therefore, as opposed to sending people to jail, they entered into an agreement, a consent decree. And so the police departments are supposed to reform themselves. That is, they're supposed to take certain measures to stop the police kind of conduct that was going on that the feds had investigated and found. That's what you're about to see with Biden. The same kind of
but the thing
stop your bad behavior.
That doesn't work. I mean, because the reality is that, like you said, they're the same police union, and they're all working together and stuff. And so if they start pressing them hard, the union's going to press on whatever city, and so then they start pressing back. So it's not like they're going to make the changes on their own.
That's right. And in the absence of charging someone, in the absence of locking people up who commit crimes against the community after you have investigated, in the absence of even charging, because the feds can charge the police department, the entirety of the police department, because it's a corporation. They could literally charge them and make them make changes, fire this person, get rid of this person. In the absence of that, unlike what Cuba is asking, you have no consequence. You are just trusting that they will do the right thing.
Because even when you were just doing your description, it sounded like some mafia charges and stuff, the type of tactics that when they came in, that they're doing. And so if anybody else, they'd be going to jail for it.
They would be locked up. Absolutely.
Exactly. So, how are we thinking that these actions are horrible on one end, but when an officer does it, it's okay? No, actually, it's worse, because you are the person that's supposed to be making sure the law is right. So it's worse. Like one of them, they talked about that they should get double the punishment.
Right.
Yeah, because they're the person that we're trusting to be able to protect us, to be able to follow the law. And that's one of the things that with me that I really believe would police reform, that they need to start doing some serious investigations on the individuals. I mean, you have it that there was a racist in the 1970s, and he was like one of the top racists, and so he wrote a book called Teller Diaries. And in the Teller Diaries, he actually told all his racist people, and they all, that join. Okay. Oh, he told all his racist people that they should join the police forces, and so here it is. If you look at it, this rise from the Reaganism in the 80s, where we went from 500,000 to 2.2 million people in the police, is actually a direct response to some of the people listening to what he said. And in the book, he told them to join the police forces, join the other federal agencies, and all of these agencies out there. And if you look at the tactics, you look at the way these people are acting, you're basically seeing that a lot of them are part of the organizations. During this investigation, like when you do federal work, in order to work at a federal agency or just doing doing construction, if you're going to do construction at the White House, you're going to do construction at any of the embassies, they investigate you. You have to get a top secret security clearance or a certain type of clearance. And so they go and they ask questions about you. They need to do this with the officers. Has this officer ever called somebody the N-word? Has this officer been a part of a racist organization? If you have, then you're not qualified to be able to be a public servant. And so I think that part of it, that it should be a separate national organization that's not a federal, a government organization. It should be an independent body that actually goes through the certification and investigation of the officers, and to be able to make sure that these are people that are not a part of racist organizations or other organizations or have that type of history. A lot of these guys, if you just pull up their arm, you'll see that they got tattoos on their arm for, the Nazi groups. So, and then you're wondering, why are they doing this?
Yeah.
How have they been allowed to? And the other officers know that this individual is a public service out there servicing people, and wonder why they're taking an aggression. Well, you're part of an organization that pushes you for,
Based on what you just described in the Turner Diaries, in 2006, the FBI had conducted an undercover investigation of law enforcement and determined that law enforcement had been infiltrated by white supremacists. That was in 2006. In 2008, they tried to do something about it. They were cut off because of the Bush administration, and it never really took off into how do we weed out these people who are intimately connected to racist organizations. In Pennsylvania, they fired 25 officers who they found out were all part of a racist white supremacist organization in 2019. I believe it happened in Texas. I believe it happened in Boston. So here you are around the country. Now, later, these types of things are manifesting, and they're manifesting, though, after Trayvon Martin. They're manifesting after the young kid in Cleveland. They're manifesting after Mike Brown. All these dead bodies here, and now you're starting to understand that there's an agenda, or at least potentially an agenda out there, that people believe that they can get away with it, their racist philosophy, by joining the police force.
And then
until there's reform, you're going to get. Until there's a discussion, it's not even a discussion right now.
It's not.
Has at least asked for the discussion.
Yeah, because the thing is part of the racist technique is to make you hate what you should love. And that's what they do. So, I would love to have good officers in my neighborhood protecting my family. I love to have my mother be able to walk through the neighborhood, and my children be able to walk, or my nieces and nephew to be walk, and there's an officer that says hi that really has a concern. So, but when you have people that are racist, then the people are not liking the officers, so they're hating police, which police is a necessary thing in your community.
Yeah.
In order to be able to have, or policing some form of it, or protection, to be able to deal with the situation. That's why I was glad they even brought up domestic abuse. Dealing with that situation. You eliminate the police. Now, are we going to have a decrease in domestic abuse, or are we going to have an increase? What about rape and the other things? Investigating that. Are we going to have a decrease, or increase, because we don't have anybody to be able to deal with those situations?
In New York in 2014, I believe it was, they had a 2014, whenever it was, Judge Scheinlin ruled on a case of racial profiling out of New York City. And it determined that over a period of a certain amount of time, nearly 5 million stop frisk racial profiling stops, and the vast majority of them, 95% of them, were black kids. And out of that 95%, only maybe about 3% of them had contraband or illegal weapons.
Right.
Of the 5% that was white, nearly 70% of them had contrabands or illegal drugs. And she ruled that what the police were doing was forcing the black community to step away from protecting or trusting the police. Meaning that if a crime was committed right in front of them, rather than go to the police who they felt like would charge them, you saw it in the Central Park case, rather than go to where they would say, hey, look, this crime is going on, they was afraid that they might be the one who gets charged, so they kept their mouth shut.
Right.
And a whole circumstance came about by virtue of that, black people not trusting the police. And then it happened in Baltimore. The exact same thing. If you read the Baltimore Sun 2018 reports on policing, it says that the community will not come forward to talk to the police officers because they don't trust that the police will treat them fairly, tell the story right, or not even put their name out as potential snitches or whatever in order to turn them to where they become police informants.
And that's one of the things that's there, like you said, potential snitches. When you have, criminals, and that's it. You're a criminal. If you're a criminal, if you decide to join the police force and then still do criminal activity, you're a criminal just like anybody else. So if I'm a criminal and I have drug dealers that I'm protecting, and then Joe Citizen comes up and he tells on him, then he's messing with my money. So then I put him out there, and next thing you know, something happens. So a lot of people know that that's the case. They see these payoffs, they see these type of things, and so they're not going to put their life on the line.
Right.
And so
which was the exact circumstance in Baltimore with that armed task force that they had with those 15 officers that were busted on the wire, protecting heroin dealers in Towson, Baltimore area. The police were doing the protecting and taking the money from them and still.
And see, and this is when, like I said, when I keep hearing this thing, defund police. No, like I said, it's necessary, but we need to stop that. We need to investigate more. We need to be able to make sure that you have good citizens. And it's like I said, do thorough investigation. See what type of person this person was in high school, is in college. If a person just came back from fighting in war, you can't take a person that just came back from war and then put him back on the street and let him be a police officer. He has to go through psychological evaluation. We have to be able to investigate his military record to see when he was over there, was he killing people? Because once you get used to killing, or in a situation somebody acts up, what do? And you see in Afghanistan, you see in Iraq, they do just like they're doing to our people today. They come and they're very aggressive. They're not light. And so a lot of those people that are still going through that type of syndrome, they come right off the plane. Next thing you know, they're back in their police officers. So we have to have independent parties, independent groups dealing with that and investigating and making sure that qualified individuals are there. And like a lot of things they address, then the improper people need to be removed.
Right. Well, I agree with defunding the police for the exact same reason that you say. That money could be spent on the people doing investigations. That money could be spent on social workers as opposed to social workers coming there and helping the young lady who's going to get in the police car.
Well, I would say reappropriating the funds, and that's it. That's under supervision. But see, the thing is, what happens is, if a lot of people that are opposition will take that and they will use it for their own. Because you didn't spell out exactly what you're saying. What are you saying? And everybody's like, no, I want police. Right. So then we say, no, what we're talking about is reappropriating funds. Instead of having these guys with military uniforms coming into our neighborhood, you have somebody, just regular person doing investigation like you talked about. Instead of having a police officer come and investigate and asking people questions about what happened to the crime, you're going to have somebody else from a different division coming in without a gun, just asking questions about the crime, so the people can feel more comfortable. Whereas they're not comfortable with the people that have the
military weapons,
exactly,
etc. But all that is part of the funding of the police. Now they have AK-47 or AR-15 walking around the street with a assault weapon with a magazine that has 30.
Yeah, I was looking at the video that they had, the camera in Louisville, and this looked like Iraq. I mean, before the no-knock.
Absolutely.
When they went in the wrong house and stuff. They kicked and they showed the guys, they had everything, the helmets and all of that and stuff, and they're going in. It's like, what type of drug dealers are you dealing with? And I mean, and it shouldn't be that you're that armed up to go in for some like regular case and stuff.
Right.
So
all that is part of the funding, and I agree that some people, the politicians like to say defund the police, and they debate on the issue, meaning we taking money from the police, like we're going to shut the police down. I don't think that anybody who has ever sincerely articulated defund the police didn't mean anything other than take money that is being used for things that they don't necessarily need them for, and give them to people who can make the job easier, and especially who could benefit the community better.
And that's why it's important, like I said, but for us, you got to make sure that you cover everything, because what happens is they like to use it.
But if they had to really sincerely discuss this, everybody would understand.
And it's still open, like the caller said, what's happening?
That's right.
And that's what I'm asking. What's happening? What are we going to do? That's why we're bringing it up, so the average person can be able to see what's going on and be able to speak to the people. We're trying to get you to spark this up. We're trying to get you to make a change. I mean, we wanted people to call in, and we're coming to near the end of our time, but we want to be able to make a change in our society. We want to change in our culture, and a lot of our culture is because of what's been cultivated. Cultivating culture is just not from talk. Cultivating culture is from the action, the society that we're living in the circumstances, and we need to be able to have some change. And this is beautiful that is being able to, it's being put forth, but it's going to take some participation from us. Right. This whole thing of sitting back and the government taking care of you and they're going to solve it, next politician's going to solve it, you're going to have a savior coming in, that has never been and it never will be.
That's right.
We need to return to what we had from our successes before, and our successes before where we always had local leaders. Local leaders is what we need. Back in the day when everybody focused on Malcolm and Martin, one of the things about with Martin Luther King, yes, he was the leader as far as representing all, but in every city, every town, every place, they had local leaders that he was able to talk with and direct. Same thing with Malcolm. As far as with the nation at the time, they had local leaders in every place that you can be able to go to. And this is what we need to return to, people that we can be able to see and be able to speak with, and that then they can get us to be more involved. But this syndicated type of thing where it's just national and it's one solution for the whole nation. No, each city has its own issues, its own problems, and we have to be able to address it, but we have to take a step forward and be active. So you want to close out?
The people have their pulse on what's going on in their community. It's really sad, without police reform, you are potentially, if you're black or Latino or poor white, you're potentially a victim of the criminal and a victim of the cop. And you're not really sure who is the worst criminal in many instances.
Right.
And that's frightening, because again, nothing like going to see a police officer testifying and saying so-and-so is hustling on my block, and that cop is working with so-and-so who's hustling on your block.
Right.
There's nothing more frightening. Everybody in the community, when they hear that, everybody backs up. So the reform has to come on the local level where the organizations get together and say, this is why we need people who live in our community, so we can check them. That's what residency is all about. And they have a vested interest in our community. They're going to live here. They can't watch the community go down. So they're going to do what's necessary to keep their property values up, to make sure their kids go to the right school, make sure that their kids get home safe, just like we want our kids to get home safe, just like we want our kids to have the proper treatment when they get in school and out of school. So if you're living, that's why the residency requirement has to be a discussion.
And that's important. We kind of didn't go over, but that's important. That's important because imagine kids growing up with an officer and they know him. He lives in the building. Their kids live in the building. They're playing, and so they feel more comfortable. Because this whole thing, I would always remind the brothers in the prison. The Creator says that perhaps there's a thing that you may hate something that is good for you and love something that is bad for you, and they make us. And I said a perfect example. You guys, we love criminality, but we hate the law. And I said, what does criminality do? I said, criminality got you guys up in here. Mm-hmm. And I said, but now, and you hated the law, but now that you're in here, you love the law. You're in the law library all the time, trying to find out what laws can be able to protect you and get you off your case. Right. And so, we need to be able to love the laws and use the laws, because what happens, the way they're able to get us is that corrupt individuals act as though they are representing the law. No, corrupt individuals represent their own selves, whether it's through politics, whether it's through policing, whether it's through just regular legislation. Mm-hmm. They don't have intent to be there for the constituents, to help the people. Right. They have intent for their specific goal, which is corruption and deception. And so this is what we have to do. We have to start studying these laws and looking at the laws and start loving the law and start following the law to be able to protect ourselves, to keep us out, and encouraging others and encouraging our own people to be able to, like you said, if you have a community effort, you have a family member, now you're an officer, and then you're going to make sure that everybody's covered. You're going to, so that blue line, you can cross it, because I'm going to cross it because I can't cross my bloodline. Mm-hmm. So we have 5 minutes. I'm not going to cross my family, right, because of this blue line. But if I do a blue line and I'm not even from that neighborhood, okay, I do whatever. I'm going to turn my back to this corrupt activity. Right. But if I live in a neighborhood and somebody from, Jersey, whatever, wants to come over to New York and be an officer, and then I'm like, nah, I live here, man.
Right.
I'm not going to let that. You going to set up and you going to get with the drug? Nah, a blue line, you police union and all of that. No, you'll be more apt to be able to stand up and stuff.
Absolutely, because your kid might be one in the crossfire. Your kid might be the one who the bad guy is stopping on a racial profile. Your kid might be the one who's driving his car because it's a nice car and the officer's in a bad mood, brings him out and slaps him upside the head or maybe puts a bullet in it. When you have that proximity, that connection, that's a totally different ball game that you're talking about.
And then you know about, because a lot of times with the kids, the reason why a lot of these kids carry guns, like I said, you grow up in the Bronx. I mean, not everybody with a gun, is hustling. The reality is you know that other people have it, and you have to be able to protect your family. And so you live in a rough area, they have you end up having to be the police.
Right.
You have to police, even though you're not doing anything. But if something happens, or people have to know, so the drug dealers, everybody knows they have guns, and so they're doing what they want to do. But you living in the neighborhood, they know you have yours, you protect, and so that's the type of society. So imagine if we had officers, so we can feel more comfortable, so these kids won't have to join a gang to be able to get a protection, just to be able to go to school, or be able to have a illegal gun to be able to protect my family and stuff, because nobody else is doing, or the drug dealers are running the neighborhood and stuff.
That's right. So I'll give my part of summing up, so that since you say people need to learn to love the law, they can tune in to hsrn.com every Thursday night from 8 to 10 to participate in the Raw Law Project. That's exactly what we do. We discuss the law, the politics, the social issues surrounding the law, and the politics and the history, so that you don't walk away just thinking that this is something that happened in a vacuum. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's been a plan since day one. Also, this particular contract with Black America that Ice Cube put forward, I don't care whether he went and took it to Trump, or he takes it to Simon Legree, or maybe even Adolf Hitler. The idea is that if you're from the black community, you need to be putting issues in front of the people that have them discussed, so that that discussion can lead to solution, because we really need solutions, especially as it relates to police reform.
And what about your book?
The book is called Raw Law, An Urban Guide to Criminal Justice. The second book is called April 4th, Lessons on Living and Dying. It's a tribute to Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and the Honorable Adam Clayton Powell Jr. And last but not least, just recently out, is America in Blackface, Essays and Criticisms of Black Leadership.
They can buy it online?
They can pick it all up online.
Okay. And I mean, the thing that he said is, solutions. That's what we need, solutions. We're, unfortunately, for the past 40, 50 years, most of our leadership have become famous, or people get famous because they were just talking about the problems. Well, we know the problems. Now with social media, we see the problems all the time. They have it on me. They have the picture. They're showing it constantly. We need solutions. Solutions get results and get change. Talking about the problem, what does it do? It doesn't change it. It just gets you enraged. We're trying to be able to change this page. We're trying to be able to increase the knowledge. We're trying to be able to make a change. We need solutions. And if you guys got some solutions, please call next time. That number is 301-429-9247. Write that down for the next time we see you on the show. And the next show, we're going to go talking about finance from the contract, and then also entertainment. So we'll probably be wrapping it up and go into other issues. And some of the other issues that we're going to be talking about on cultivating culture, use of the word, the N word and stuff, how that public use of it. Another thing is the taboo in our society is rape. When they talk about it, domestic violence. Domestic violence, this is something major, and you never really have conversations. And we need to be able to have these type of conversations that you don't hear all the time. And we're going to talk about it to be able to change this culture amongst our people, and basically change the culture of the world, because everybody loves our culture. But unfortunately, they got the wrong culture. That's not us.
That's right. Bring it to them.
All right. Peace be with you. Assalamu alaikum. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Good job.
My brother.